Hello, I'm JeanLuc and you're watching TVP World Talks, where every word matters. The French parliamentary elections were hailed as a historic moment before they even took place. Now, after the results are announced after the end of the second round, well, the question is, can we say that this is a historic event? A somewhat unexpected one after that. The 182 seats in parliament are now to go to the left. So the big question is, which direction is France going to take right now? How will the government be formed? In short, what events await us in the near future? And for that, we're going to be speaking to Nicolas Tenzer from the Center for European Policy Analysis. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Good evening.
So let us begin with the most obvious, but at the same time probably most challenging question, at least from the perspective of Emmanuel Macron probably. Who is going to be the next Prime Minister?
Well, I think that it's very difficult to say right now. I think that for the moment, and basically could endure during some weeks or even some months, Gabriel Attal was reappointed. I mean that Macron decided to keep it in his position right now, just in order to form a government. But if we see what happens mostly, in Germany, when they have to build a kind of coalitions between different forces, it could take months. Last time, it took basically 3 months to form a coalition in Germany. I think that could happen in France, and especially because France is not used to have this kind of coalition government. But I think this will be probably the only way out of the very difficult situation right now. Of course, you have many candidates. It could be politicians coming probably from the Socialist Party, or could be an independent figures. I remember that some weeks ago, Gabriel Attal, one of the leaders of the left, Raphael Glucksmann, one of the leaders of the left, said that it could be the well-known trade and former trade unionist, Laurent Berger, who is a very moderate trade unionist indeed, very respected man, or it could be another figure as well.
So how important is it that we consider JeanLuc Monceau, because he is often being described as one of the driving forces behind the new Popular Front, one of the driving forces of this election victory. He is very vocal about his views. He is also has a powerful presence in the media, right? I mean, when thinking about these elections, this is the name that tends to pop up as a sort of a person who is antithetical to Jordan Bardella. But there are also controversies regarding his past, regarding his viewpoints. But how important is he really at this stage? Is this the kind of person that might become Prime Minister, or is he basically an outlier in a much bigger puzzle?
Well, basically, no one could really believe that he could become a prime minister for many reasons. First of all, if we consider all the other leftist forces, the Socialist Party or the Greens, notably, the France Insoumise, which is Mélenchon's party, doesn't have the majority within the left. That's the first point. The second point is that Jean-Luc Mélenchon is mostly someone who wants to disrupt politics in France. He doesn't consider that his place is in government. He prefers to remain outside, just to disrupt, to put oil in the fire, and certainly he cannot be a prime minister acceptable for the other forces. And last but not least, if we consider the MPs elected with La France Insoumise, it's only 70 MPs, and 70 MPs, doesn't has enough weight, basically, and won't be representative of the majority of the democratic voters. Because if we had, the new Popular Front, which is the left coalition, plus the Macron's party and allies, plus also sometimes maybe some Republicans, not all Republicans, then certainly La France Insoumise is not able to represent, this very much diversity of people.
So overall, if this happens, if we have a government that is formed by the moderate forces, the more extreme one, the more radical ones, being left on the sidelines, so to say, we might at least say that the general idea of keeping the far right away from becoming mainstream or from becoming the most powerful force in French politics has been achieved. So when looking at this from the outset perspective, from the perspective of France's allies, what could this situation mean?
Well, first of all, if we consider right now the majority, in the House, the majority in the House is very much supportive of Ukraine, which matters the most, I will say. They are in favor of remaining in NATO integrated command. They are very pro-EU. And certainly, you won't find a majority in the House, even if you had the votes of the National Rally and La France Insoumise to abandon Ukraine, to throw it under the bus, and to withdraw from NATO integrated command.
Because we should mention that JeanLuc Mélenchon was and is probably a NATO skeptic, and he has made that clear.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, and he was very supportive of Russia, never blaming Russia, never blaming also Assad regime in Syria, always basically blaming the US and blaming the EU allies. I mean, certainly he's not an acceptable figure. But having said that, he has not the majority, and even, the compromise document signed by the New Popular Front members mentioned the everlasting support of Ukraine. So it means that even some of the people in the very leftist party of Jean-Luc Mélenchon are able to compromise. And we have noted very recently that some of the figures of this very leftist party have decided to quit the movement. So maybe there could be other people saying, well, we cannot accept to remain in this kind of party. And maybe some of them could be member of a new government, having then abandoned their previous stances.
For the time being, it looks like Jean-Luc Mélenchon still thinks that he might convince everyone else on the left to support his idea of basically pushing Macron out. He suggested that Macron should should basically declare the left not only as the winners, but to entrust the position of prime minister to them. And he would certainly hope that many of the policies of the previous government are reversed. Do you think it's going to happen? Or is the compromise going to include so many compromises on the part of the left that it could actually harm them rather than bring them any benefits?
Well, basically, that's something that we could expect, but certainly it will take long. It won't be achieved, in 1 week or 2 weeks, because, as I mentioned before, we don't have this culture of compromise in France. And there must be a kind of responsibility, a sense of national interest among, the leaders of the Socialist Party, of the Greens, maybe also some of the MPs of La France Insoumise to build this coalition. But of course, Jean-Luc Mélenchon will be very furious. It won't make the life very easy for the new government because basically he's a kind of, let's say, revolutionary man. And he would expect to have more chaos in France, more turmoil, and is playing into the hand of the far right. That's just the reality of the fact. He's not a responsible figure. And I think that most of the leaders of the left understand that very perfectly. And they will try to sideline him. Not an easy task, obviously, but certainly they will manage to do so.
Will this understanding be enough to come to an agreement on issues such as the pension reform, for example? The left was going to these elections saying this pension reform has to go. So will they be able to reach a compromise with Emmanuel Macron and his followers on that? Is it even possible at this stage?
At this stage, certainly not. But what will happen, in 2 or 3 months, that basically I don't know. But it will be the interest of no one, neither the left nor the centrist parties of Emmanuel Macron coalitions, basically to have a kind of chaos in the National Assembly, because then we have in elections in 2 years and a half or so, and it will be a kind of godsend for Marine Le Pen. And that is something that no one wants. And let's be aware of something. We still have around 10 million voters who decided in the second round to vote for the far right. So basically, the far right has not vanished in France. So it remains a true threat, and also the allies must be aware of that. We must have a responsible government that is able to address also the yearnings, the fear, the concerns of the people, and answer them properly. When we have, of course, we have the program of the New Popular Front, we have the program of Macron's party and allies, but basically what could be an agreement between, those forces won't resemble at the end of the day to the programs of the New Popular Front and Macron's parties. There might be compromise, maybe on the retirement, maybe on the law on migrations, maybe on other issues, certainly, probably not on foreign policy, because most of them are completely aligned on that, especially the support to Ukraine. But there will be some compromises on many things, also on tax issues, etc.
So you've mentioned possible chaos in the National Assembly. What if this is exactly what happens? The negotiations take longer and longer. There is no compromise. No new government is formed. What would be the impact on France's position, for example, within the European Union, where it is one of the major driving forces? Can we imagine this sort of scenario, and what could be done about it?
Well, it will be very difficult, because I think the chaos cannot last during 2 years and a half. That's just something which is completely impossible. So I really hope that there won't be such a chaos. But if, let's say, it happens, certainly, the allies will have to take contingency measures. It will be very difficult, but France would have to be replaced as a driving force, in the EU. Certainly countries like Poland, maybe Germany, will be more difficult, could take the lead. And also with the new government that we have in the UK, outside the EU, but you have a lot of visits of the new British leaders to their EU counterparts, and that could be quite important, especially in terms of support to Ukraine. And that's something what I see. But certainly, the prestige and the trustworthiness of France, the credibility of France, will be very severely damaged if this kind of chaos happens.
And from a constitutional perspective, how likely is it? To what extent can the president still push through his own policies, even though he might either be having a difficult time cohabitating with the new government or working with a hung parliament where there is no clear majority? Every single vote has to be pushed through on the basis of temporary alliances. Can the president still achieve that? And not to mention the possible political costs of making it through these difficult years, and how this could actually impact on his popularity during the next elections. But can it be done at all?
Yes, it will be very difficult because Macron's popularity, to speak bluntly, is already damaged because it was a kind of reckless decisions to call for snap elections. And many people, including inside Macron's party, do not understand what really motivated his decision. And certainly it will be very difficult also to pass a lot of new laws, in the House, including the finance law, the budget. It will be very difficult. And then it will be also very difficult, for instance, to have votes on a new weapons transfer to Ukraine, new decisions. It will be difficult also then, depending on the government, of course, to send a military instructor to Ukraine and to take bold decisions, as Macron did during the past few months. So I say it will be very damaging, and as I mentioned, the credibility of France will be really severely damaged, and especially with the perspective of Marine Le Pen taking some advantage of this kind of chaos. That's why I think that most of the political forces, Macron's party and the left, the socialists, the Greens, etc., will act responsibly and will take everything on them to form a kind of coalition. But I do not expect, again, this coalition to take place, in the weeks to come. There will be some things that we will have to witness very carefully, which is on July 18th, the elections of the new president of the National Assembly. And we will see who it will be.
So this degree of uncertainty is rather unfortunate, both domestically and from an international perspective. But of course, fingers crossed that things will proceed towards some sort of viable long-term resolution there. Nicolas Tenzer was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your insight.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
And I'm Jan Ślewiński. You're watching TVP World. Please do stay with us for more latest news and updates.